Welcome back, everyone, to today's explainer. Look, if you've ever owned a pool, managed a pond, or kept an aquarium, you already know the drill. You know that absolute sinking feeling of looking into your water and seeing that creeping murky green spreading all over the place. It's an incredibly frustrating, recurring issue for water ecosystems everywhere. I mean, you spend your entire Saturday morning armed with a brush, sweating in the sun, scrubbing away until your arms literally ache. You go to sleep thinking, okay, I finally won the battle. And then, almost like magic, it's back. So today, we're going to unravel the mystery of why algae is such a persistent opponent, relying on some real expert insights to finally crack this case.
So it's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Why does the green always come back? You pour in all these treatments, you brush the walls like crazy, but the algae just seems to laugh it off. Well, we're going to treat this explainer like a detective story today, because when it comes to returning algae blooms, there is a true culprit hiding just beneath the surface, and it's rarely what people think it is. We really need to stop just looking at the symptoms and start actually investigating the scene of the crime. All right, Section 1, the persistent algae problem. Let's dive right into understanding this threat. Let's start by just acknowledging the sheer annoyance of an active algae bloom. I mean, it can appear seemingly out of nowhere, spreading incredibly fast. And it doesn't just look bad. It completely alters the physical environment of your water. We are talking about dangerously slippery surfaces, cloudy, totally uninviting water, and a major strain on your filtration system, making it less and less effective the longer it goes on. These are the highly visible nuisances that pool and tank owners spend hours scrubbing away every single weekend. But here's the thing. This endless scrubbing, it's really just a Band-Aid. Here's where we really need to reframe our thinking. An algae bloom isn't just a random inconvenience. It is a blaring alarm bell signaling a deeper ecosystem imbalance. Your water is a delicate, living environment, and an algae outbreak represents a very specific disruption within that environment. Now, for decades, the knee-jerk reaction has always been to just blast the water with more chemicals. But treating a complex ecosystem with endless blind chemical additions, it's a deeply flawed approach. It completely ignores the underlying imbalance that is literally rolling out the red carpet for the algae in the first place.
Moving on to Section 2, 3 triggers of growth. Let's look at what's actually feeding this stuff.
So there are exactly 3 factors that must perfectly align for algae to thrive. You can kind of think of them as the unholy trinity of algae growth: nutrients, light, and low or stagnant circulation. When these 3 conditions exist in your water simultaneously, you are practically guaranteeing an algae explosion. It's really that simple. If we want to stop this cycle, we have to break up this trio. Our source material actually provides a fascinating quote on this exact point. It states, persistent blooms typically signal a specific imbalance, rather than a problem that can be solved by more chemicals alone. This perfectly busts that DIY chemical myth we all grew up with. The industry experts are outright telling us that if the bloom is persistent, just pouring another jug of off-the-shelf algicide into the water isn't going to fix your problem. You have to fix the environment itself. So let's break down those 3 environmental triggers one by one.
Suspect number 1, nutrients. Now, you might be wondering, where do they even come from? Well, they come from everyday things like leaves falling into the water, blowing dust, fertilizer runoff from your lawn, and decaying organic matter. Even inadequate sanitation that allows organic buildup to persist plays a massive role. And here is an incredibly intriguing fact I found while looking into this. Nutrient levels don't even have to be visibly high. Even incredibly small, ongoing inputs of these hidden nutrients will slowly accumulate over time, creating this sort of invisible buffet that fuels repeated blooms.
Moving on to suspect number 2, light. Algae is a plant, right? Which means it relies entirely on photosynthesis. Extended sun exposure acts as an absolute engine, rapidly accelerating the algae's growth. This is particularly crucial for outdoor water bodies. If your pool or pond receives direct afternoon sun, or say you have a decorative fountain sitting in a bright but sheltered spot, that light is driving the photosynthesis into overdrive, making algae a brutal recurring seasonal issue. And finally, our third suspect, circulation. Actually, scratch that. It's more like circulation limitations. You can have all the light and nutrients in the world, but algae absolutely loves a stagnant home. When your water palms run for too short a time, or if your filters are undersized, you get what we call dead zones in the water flow. If we really look closely at the hardware, things like poor skimming, clogged intakes, worn-out seals, or just old filter media that's lost its edge, all of these create the perfect, quiet, stagnant environments for algae spores to comfortably set up shop.
Which brings us nicely to Section 3, why algae keeps returning, treating the root cause. You see, when you just attack that visible green or brown layer, you are only treating the symptom. Sure, you might get some short-term clarity, but you are often disrupting the ecosystem even further without actually improving the mechanics of the water. To put that into perspective, in the right conditions, algae cells can double their population in just a few hours. No way, right? So, on the flip side, fixing the root conditions means actually removing the nutrient sources and improving the circulation. That is the only thing that leads to long-term stability and a restored ecosystem balance. Because if the nutrient sources and dead zones remain, the algae will absolutely return, sometimes in literally a matter of days.
And that leads us into Section 4, Professional Algae Control Solutions. Let's see how the experts handle this.
So this is the professional playbook. And notice what isn't step 1, dumping in chemicals. Instead, professionals rely on a highly methodical, staged approach. Step 1 is comprehensive water testing. Step 2 is a rigorous equipment inspection. And step 3 involves staged mechanical improvements. Professionals just don't guess, you know? They measure, they evaluate, and they upgrade the environment itself.
Let's look at step 1 a bit more closely. During water testing, pros evaluate exactly what is surviving and floating around in your water. They look at key parameters, like nutrient indicators, basically finding out what the algae is actually eating for dinner. They check sanitation levels to ensure organic buildup isn't surviving, and they measure dissolved solids. This gives professionals the exact fingerprint of your water's ecosystem. By understanding these exact parameters, they get a perfectly clear picture of the specific conditions that are allowing the algae to survive and thrive. Then they move straight to the hardware. Step 2 is the equipment inspection. Remember that stagnant circulation suspect we talked about? Well, professionals check pump runtimes to make sure water is moving long enough. They check skimmer performance to ensure debris is being caught well before it decays into nutrients. They monitor filter pressure, and they map out the flow distribution to completely eliminate those dreaded dead zones. They make absolutely sure the system is effectively moving and cleaning the water. Now, beyond just fixing the hardware, professionals also fix the daily habits of the ecosystem. This means adjusting operational routines. They will optimize pump schedules so the water is moving precisely when it needs to be. And yes, they actually manage the shade exposure where practical, strategically cutting off that photosynthesis engine. They also establish strict maintenance intervals for filter cleaning and debris removal. The ultimate goal here is to prevent algae spores from ever finding the right combination of nutrients and light to reestablish themselves. So the absolutely crucial takeaway is this. When you address the root causes and track your progress with professional retesting, you absolutely transform a frustrating weekly chore into a manageable reality. The long-term benefits are just massive. You get predictable and stable results. You actively protect the water quality instead of just nuking it with chemicals every weekend. You significantly reduce your long-term costs because you aren't constantly buying quick fix treatments. And most importantly, you keep your surfaces safer, clearer, and cleaner year-round without the endless headache.
I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought as we wrap up today's explainer. Look at your own pool, pond, or tank and ask yourself honestly, is your water truly a balanced ecosystem, or is it kind of just an algae farm waiting for the right afternoon sun to bloom? If you find yourself stuck in a constant loop of scrubbing and shocking, it might just be time to rethink your strategy. Stop treating the symptoms and seek a professional evaluation to fix the root cause once and for all. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive today. Here's to clear water and balanced ecosystems.